Hey Bookworms!
I'm Book Mouse.
And I'm Book Kitty, and this is
our BookNook. This week is all about the tropes.
We're going to Tropopia!
Alrighty then. Tropes are a thing. They're in all genres.
They're even necessary.
And they're necessary because they help move stories along. But that's when they're done good, done well.
I didn't even have to correct you.
What happens when somebody abuses, overuses, misuses, misunderstands a trope, and then you're stuck with this thing? I've had authors that I'm like, I love everything else you write. What is this?
To start us off and give us a nice starting point, I would like to read off what the actual definition of a literary trope is. According to Wikipedia, a literary trope is the use of figurative language via word, phrase, or image for artistic effects, such as using a figure of speech. The word trope has also come to be used for describing commonly reoccurring literary and rhetorical devices, motifs, or cliches in creative works. Even by that definition, they are meant to be a literary tool.
You have a fly. Do you use a fly swatter or a hammer?
Or a tennis racket.
Or a tennis racket. I think if you're going to use a trope, you need to have a goal. You need to know why you're using the trope. You need to know what the end result is going to be. Or even if you don't know what the end result is going to be, what is your goal in using that trope? Does it have a purpose?
Is it just there because every story in this genre has it?
Or because you couldn't think of something to make the story move along, so you throw a trope in. What's a trope you like?
A trope I like? It's actually a new trope.
Oh.
Because the old trope, the one that I hate, is the one with the man saving the day and the man saving the damsel in distress. I do like that trope, but I like it when it's in reverse. When the lady has to save the man, which is happening more and more, which is why I can say that it's a trope. You know, we saw it in The War Queen just recently, and I've seen it in a few other things. It usually, speaking of using them as a tool, it usually is there to show that some people are just all talk, to show how strong the female character really is versus how strong does she say she is. Anybody can be a hero at any given time. It just takes courage, will, and determination.
Okay.
So I really like that trope. I really like when there's a male character or a masculine type character that's in a pickle, and the female or feminine type character kind of either has the solution, figures out the solution, or just straight saves him.
Okay.
Dragon style.
I like doses of reality. I like when your heroine or your hero is in a situation that you could look at yourself and go, I could have been there. I see myself possibly someday encountering that situation. Using reality. Don't go off on to La La Land.
Especially if you're in a fantasy genre, it's best to leave the fantasy to the fantasy elements and then making the rest of it as realistic as possible so that you have the immersion.
When you overuse it, nothing about the book is relatable. I need some part of the book to be relatable to something I've experienced or could experience.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
I like when there's that dose of realism from modern world or just recent past that I could possibly myself experience and put myself in the character's shoes because it's possible.
What is your least favorite trope? The one you hate the most?
Overpowered characters. I can think of 2 or 3 authors off the top of my head that I started reading their books. I loved them. And then by book 3 or 4, I'm like, what the hell? You cannot have a character that's so freaking powerful that werewolves and vampires bow down to them. And, you know, they could just boop. It has to be a realistic progression. I don't like when you just wake up and, oh, well, it just happened. She's touched. Or, oh, they were born under a blue moon in the 12th month. Make it something that we can see a progression. And then to us, we're getting it in little bites. And as we absorb the information,
It has to make sense.
It makes sense to us.
It tracks.
You know, in real life, you don't just know how to drive a car the day you put a key in the ignition. It irks the shit out of me. I see it a lot in sci-fi, fantasy, and paranormal. Okay, so I read those the most, but try to make it a little bit, I'm always going to go back to the word relatable. You know, sci-fi nerds, we tend to follow Neil deGrasse Tyson. We tend to follow Bill Nye and some of those other scientists out there. And so if we see something that's just so outrageous, it's going to turn us off. The overpowered character will piss me off every time unless I can see a true purpose, not just to fill pages, not just to have somebody that can kick everybody's ass. If there's a purpose, an end game to it, then I'll buy it.
I can't stand unhealthy relationships being portrayed in a positive way in books. It happens more so in romance novels, but it is pervasive through all genres. And I see it in fantasy so much. And I think, honestly, it happens because they're not focusing on the relationship part. They're focusing, especially in fantasy, on the world building part, and maybe that part's falling to the wayside a little bit. I can't stand seeing love triangles, just in general. I'm kind of sick of them. It's overdone. I will state this for everything that I'm about to rant about. If it's done in the right way, with the right timing and the right circumstances, it's always an exception. There's always an exception to the rule. But I can't stand the love triangle of people fighting over the girl. You ever notice it's always over the girl. The guy is never the point of the love triangle. That would be something I would love to see a little more often. You know, two girls that maybe are friends and they have a crush on the same guy, and instead of going, oh, I'm your friend, I'm going to let you have him, actually having that interplay of like, but I really like him, and I really like him, and, well, can we all date? And that leads me to the next one. When polyamory or open relationships or swinging is explored in mainstream media, books, movies, and TV shows, it's either shown with a completely disastrous middle and ending to it, or it's shown completely wrong, like not how it works. And for the love of God, not all polyamory is thruples. When I do see the very seldom example of polyamory or open relationships, I see thruples, except in the case of Friday by Robert Heinlein, where we had one example of a bad poly relationship and then a good poly relationship. And I like that dichotomy. He showed both. Right. He didn't just show a healthy example. He showed what it compared to. God, can we stop with the fucking threesomes? Can we get some orgies? I believe we also mentioned or also talked about the fact that when you do want to include polyamory, open relationships, swingers, kink in your story, no matter what degree it's to, it could be very little reference to very detailed graphic representation. Do your research. Know the terminology. Know the definition. Kitchen table polyamory is kind of what it sounds like. But there are other things that are a little bit more nuanced than what the term might indicate. And anybody reading your book who has experienced any kind of true open relationship or true polyamorous relationship or something along that lines will know the difference, and you could run the risk of highly insulting an entire group of people that are already misrepresented. Do extensive research.
Yes.
Check out, there are several really large polyamory groups on Facebook, which is really easy to access, and most of the people in there are very happy to answer questions. You could make a post about, hey, I'm writing this story, I want to include polyamory, but I want to do it right, and you'll have a bunch of responses of people willing to give you their experiences. Maybe they'll give you a story that you could replay and use in your book. Like, do your research. Hang out with some people who identify as polyamorous or open. Get their take on it. Don't just say, oh, I think this is how it should work, and do it. Because I was watching a show the other day, and what show, I know what it is, but it doesn't really matter for the point of this. Okay. And there was this girl who was kind of just seeing, not quite dating, but kind of seeing this other boy, and they were teenagers, and got closer to one of the other guys in their group. They were all already friends. And then they come back together, and they're walking through school, and And they're both noticing how she's treating the other, and she eventually, like, it comes out, and she's like, guys, I don't want to pick. I like you for these reasons, I like you for these reasons, and I don't think I should have to choose. And I was like, fuck yes, we're about to see something really awesome. And then the next day, the first guy that she was seeing was like, I can't do this. You have to, I can't share you. And I'm just like, okay, I get that there are some people out there that are straight monogamous, and I'm not judging that. Not judging that at all. But it would have been nice to see in literature somebody actually go, okay, let's give this a try. Related to that, I'd also like to see a lot more relationships that include asexual components. It is possible to have a romantic relationship without sex. I have a girlfriend. We've never had sex. We've been dating for over a year, and our relationship is great. I would love to see more aromantic relationships, where it's just sex. I mean, we see that, but we don't see it mentioned as such, that it's a valid thing.
Right. They actually kind of portray it kind of as
wrong
or a dirty secret.
Oh, you're just a slut.
Yeah.
No. Oh, and by the way, there is such a thing as solo polyamory. Just remember that.
Bottom line, do your research. Yeah. Do you have a trope that you hate, that you like? Maybe when you want to see more.
Something we've talked about, something we haven't talked about.
Or you see a different perspective of something we've presented. Hey, comment.
Please.
Let us know, because we integrate those into our own works.
And you might even be able to help me with my writing.
We are open to having our minds changed. I will give you that. We are open to having our minds changed. We are open to seeing both sides of the story. Whether we agree with it or not, we do want to know about it.
How many things have we agreed to disagree on?
Join us next week. We are going to take a look at another one of my favorite authors, Spider Robinson's Callahan's Crosstime Saloon. Hope you like puns.
I've never read this book, but I super love puns, so it should be fun. Don't forget to check the description below, where I will list where you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, and Patreon.
Speaking of Patreon, you can become a patron of our BookNook starting at just $3.
Join us for all sorts of fun shit, like early access to our weekly videos,
behind-the-scenes footage, bloopers, and shoutouts.
Become a patron at any tier. You gain access to our live chat community, where we can just sit and chat about books, about us, about you, about writing, anything.
Hit that subscribe button below and ring the bell so that you always know when we post new content.
We do post new content weekly at Mondays at 2 p.m., but we also sometimes publish stuff on Tuesdays or Saturdays when we just have something extra to do.
We've had fun this week. Hope you did too. This has been Book Mouse.
And I'm Book Kitty, and we are now
signing off.